Hi, my name is Nicholas.
Hi, I'm Kathy.
I'm Ashling.
I'm Eva.
I'm also Aishling. I think to prepare it, we just came up with a couple of questions we were going to ask him, and with a couple of possible cutaways from what I could remember of the house and his office. For the most part, we were quite happy with the shoot. The framing, when we looked back on it, was a little bit off. That it just happened to be that Tim asked if he could put in some advertising for surf seats, and it kind of skewed the shot more so to the left hand side rather than keeping it balanced and him looking straight on at us. Another few problems that we came into were that when we were doing the outdoor shots, it started getting very bright on the day. Lots of natural light was coming in through the windows of his office, and so some of the shots kind of look slightly washed out, but nothing that we couldn't fix with a little bit of colour correction and white balance. I think overall we didn't have really any problems, just the framing was slightly off when we were editing, but we easily fixed it by kind of stretching out the shots a little bit and kind of moving them over slightly. That thankfully with HD there is about a 10% give for stretching and moving them over so that it won't downgrade the quality, and you kind of can keep that nice sharp look to it as well.
It was quick as well because we had to do it all in one day, and we did it in about, it was only about 2 or 3 hours there, not even.
Yeah.
And so that was good because it forced us to work within a time frame, as opposed to kind of doing one day and another day. But we had 2 hours, did it, and it worked out well because we had to go in, get it all organised, and Tim was very accommodating. Another client might have been awkward, but he was quite accommodating.
Is there anything that we would do differently? I suppose from my own experience on that day, that I would kind of like to organise transport a little bit better.
Yeah.
That there was a mix up with what trains people were getting, and I consequently came out a little bit later to the shoot than I was supposed to, so it kind of ended up mixing up the timetable a little bit, so we had less time to shoot.
We did encounter a lot of problems initially with getting our idea and kind of finalising it.
We had a number of ideas, and it kind of none of them really panned out. Every time we tried to do something, it just either became awkward or the story wasn't there. But we weren't really we still had time to do stuff.
I think the word of advice for before shooting was definitely have your plan A's and B's and C's, and even if that happens, you still might end up, looking for someone last minute. But it seemed to work out nicely on the day because we got some good weather.
But also take advantage of if you spot something, like Eva spotted. If you see something and you think it could be good, because that was really good like that. You just stumbled across it, and then all of a sudden it snowballed and it took off. And he was very accommodating. He was very happy to do it, so it kind of worked out.
Our first documentary shoot was to originally go out to the Curragh camp in Kildare and interview the soldiers, about 10 men contingent that are being sent out to Mali to help train the forces out there. Initially we got a lot of good feedback. That I contacted the press office for the Defence Forces, and they were quite accommodating. They pointed me in the right direction and told me to get in contact with a commandant. Unfortunately, the commandant didn't reply to me within a week, and admittedly I got a tiny bit snarky with him in an email asking if he could reply back because we were under a deadline and that I needed to know as soon as possible. And unfortunately he sent back saying that I needed to fill in forms, submit him a thesis proposal as well, and then if that was accepted he would get back to me in about 3 to 4 weeks. And then he also wanted a list of questions and shots that I wished to get, and it just ended up being an awful lot of hassle for essentially something that would have been very tight to shoot in the time frame. So So I suppose lesson learned from that, don't be snarky with the defence forces. And then we had our backup plan, we ran into other problems as well. So
we had a number of ideas, and it kind of none of them really panned out. Every time we tried to do something, it just either became awkward or the story wasn't there. But we weren't really like, we still had time to do stuff. And then I'll pass you over to Eva now, who loves to speak.
Yeah, well, we had loads of like backup plans. We had a plan B that failed due to illness, and we had a plan C that was to do with Special Olympics. Not Special Olympics. It was disabilities, yeah. And that failed as well. And we had numerous. I think we were on plan E or F at this stage, and this is where Eva found Luke, who's our actual documentary.
I was one day at Grafton, and I saw Luke playing his piano, and I was impressed, so I decided to ask him if we could do the documentary with him. And he agreed, and finally we did it with him.
Overall, it was quite pleasant to shoot, as Aishling was saying, that we got some really amazing weather for the fact that during the time that we were shooting, it snowed the week before on the weekend, and we got gloriously sunny day. So our shots ended up being quite lovely and contrasted with like lots of depth in them. Thing again, it got extremely bright around 12 o'clock, and where Luke was positioned outside Brown Thomas, there was a lot of kind of glare and feedback, so some of the shots again were slightly overexposed, but nothing that we couldn't fix. And one of the main issues with the camera was that I've only noticed when we were editing back that I think the gain must have been up slightly for the shots within the Beauties Cafe, because there's this slightly speckling effect on the dark backgrounds, but it's nothing very noticeable.
Audio on the day, we tried to get into the interviewees early first thing, and we thought it would be, well, I thought it would be a lot quieter, and first thing in the morning was quite busy, so there was a lot of background noise, and it kind of hard to avoid, and we couldn't really move. We didn't have the time to move because he had to set up his equipment, set up the piano and stuff, so it was just a case of shooting and being able to edit it the best we can.
I think one word of advice that I would give to people, and what I would probably do better if I had the chance to go back and do it again, is that I would plan my roll B shots a little bit more thoroughly. That on the day, because Grafton Street got so packed, that I think we were kind of focusing an awful lot on people shots rather than interaction shots. So also I kind of would have liked to got more environmental shots, kind of more of the flower traders, maybe other buskers as well. But I'm quite happy with how the shoot went in the end. So
I did the interviews both with Tim Rooney as well as Luke Slot, and I think it's quite important as a word of advice that you pick somebody who's comfortable in front of the camera and who's comfortable talking to you, and who doesn't always give you yes and no answers. But
I think one of the most important things that we did with the interviewee before we started is that we asked them could they actually answer the question in the answer. So if we said, could you tell us your name, instead of saying Luke, they said, my name is Luke. Just simple little things like that. It gives you a little bit more room for editing and a little bit more leverage too, so that you don't have to be constantly referring back to your interview sheet and say, oh, what question was that and what's he answering here.
Unfortunately, I couldn't make the shoot to help out on the day. I don't think it would have made any difference in terms of what came about in the end, because the environment caused its own problems. And like the group saying, the issues it was difficult to reshoot, or it was going to be hard to reshoot something like that because it was a one-day opportunity as well. The biggest issue with the audio was the background noise of the space. Ideally we would have had a clean room so there was only the voice of the person speaking, and then especially because they're a musician, we wanted the bed of their music. However, because Bewley's was so loud, it was awkward for that. But the way we've tried to fix it then was to place Luke in Bewley's quite quickly and the surroundings, so that the viewer knows it's an interview in a cafe, and it allows for the clinking of glasses and other noises to not be intrusive, but instead to be part of the piece. And then the main thing was to take Luke's interview out of Final Cut, bounce it out as an audio file, drop it into Pro Tools, and then go through it as finely as possible with editing frequencies and dropping out frequencies. The difficulty of doing something like that is it becomes digitized very quickly if you don't do it right. So that took a little bit of time, but I think it worked out well.
Maybe William, since you're looking at this now, might disagree with me, but I think you're like, for students doing assignment 1, have a little bit more fun, experiment around with the camera, and kind of get used to the feel of shots, like also get used to the feel and weight of the camera, and just kind of get used to it. My advice would be take out the camera a day beforehand and sit down and play with the functions on it, and just kind of get it, like, as weird as it sounds, get acquainted with the camera, because you're going to be using it an awful lot over the next little while. Also remember to take out a battery charger, because there's nothing worse than seeing your battery going down to about 10 minutes and you go, oh, is the other battery charged? And when you check, it's not. That causes panic. If you have a brand new phone, like an iPhone or a very high quality camera on your phone, play around with that and try and get shots that you mightn't usually be able to get. So like leaning over a piano at the keys, or even putting your phone in behind the keys so you can see the hammers moving back and forth. It can make for some quite interesting footage as well. So